With so many podcasts out there, shows can get lost in the shuffle. That's why we implore you to check out Too Many Captains. You can find us at amoviepodcast.com.
5 unique takes on Hollywood movies and culture. Find us on Twitter at It's a Film Podcast.
Check our intellectual deep dives into theatrical films. Find us on Instagram at Too Many Captains Productions.
Unique takes on soundtracks. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Too Many Captains Productions.
Find us at amoviepodcast.com on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Play. And now, here comes a new episode of Collateral Cinema.
I'm Bo Maddox.
I'm Robert Ortegon.
I'm Ashley Chancellor.
This is Lydia Malcom.
This is Naomi McQuade.
And I'm Jen McQuade from Shocked and Applaud.
And this is Collateral Cinema. Welcome to Collateral Cinema, the only movie podcast that matters, where we focus on good movies, bad movies, and everything else in between in the world of cinema. We are podcasting straight from somewhere in South Texas, and yes, my friends, we are a 420 friendly podcast. So whatever you have, be it dabs, blunts, bongs, or joints, smoke it if you've got it. And everybody, we are returning to a perennial favorite of ours, Mr. David Lynch, right, Robert?
Yes, we are.
Yeah.
This is our second Lynch film, right?
Yeah, it is our second Lynch film. And it's quite possibly one of the more interesting movies. I would even say more accessible. And before we reveal what the movie is, we'll go ahead and allow our guests to introduce themselves. And we have Shocked and Applaud with us. Go ahead and introduce yourselves.
Hello. I'm the ineffable Naomi McQuade from Shocked and Applaud.
I'm Jen McQuade, the producer and audio editor.
And this is Lydia Malcom, just another person who's talking about movies on the internet.
Excellent, excellent. And just go ahead and give us like just a general breakdown of what your show is about.
Yeah, I would categorize it as one of the only show that takes longer to talk about the movie than the movie runs itself.
Every time.
Oh, wow.
We dedicate a full month to the review of our films, and we try to get as much dialogue and factual stuff in there as well. We've got a couple of fact checkers that help us out as well. And then, I don't know, we try to relate it to other experiences that we've had in our own lives and just have a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, like we acknowledge the experience that we've had with a film betwixt the three of us, and then because that is hardly enough, we end each month with shock talk between our dear friends Sean and Maddie, who fix the things that we got wrong. Uh-oh. But also like add really, and then they throw in like our reviews of our podcasts and their own thoughts and feelings about the experience. And it just rounds out like the whole month of the experience, I would say.
That is really an interesting angle to take for a movie podcast. That sounds really interesting. And the movie that we are doing today is what I would say, like I said earlier, one of David Lynch's more accessible movies, I kind of feel like. It's a little more straightforward, I would say. It's Mulholland Drive. Mm. It came out, I believe, in 2002, right?
2001, I think.
2001.
Yeah, one, I think, you guys.
Yeah. And it's one of those movies that, I mean, it's quintessentially 2000s, but because of the way that David Lynch actually filmed it, it really evokes kind of a golden Hollywood vibe to it. And I think that was very intentional on his part. I guess we'll go ahead and open with just some general thoughts about Mulholland Drive. We'll go ahead and start with Shocked and Applaud. What do y'all think about this movie so far? Just your first initial thoughts.
Okay, so this is Lydia, by the way. I'm just a little bit like, I watched this yesterday for the very first time, always kind of like got glimpses of it, but I never quite knew what the movie itself was about, even from those like, even from like cultural osmosis. So when I watched it the first time, I was like, I'm not making heads or tails of this at all. And so I like immediately went to YouTube and was like, someone has to find an explanation for this. Tell me what you think. And so that was actually by a random YouTuber that I had never seen before, like searching up what the hell is Mulholland Drive about. But it was more like, you know, okay, so this is something that can be open to interpretation depending on what you mean. But I really did like this YouTuber's interpretation about it, and it really kind of put the movie into context for me as far as plot goes, because I'm someone who, if I watch a movie, I like to actually see a story unfold, and I don't think that's necessarily something that David Lynch likes to do, because he likes to kind of evoke emotions more than plot. He likes to evoke themes and like let you see what the character is more than he is. He's not very plot heavy. Or if he is, it's not very like, you know, very straightforward plot, I guess is what I would say.
Yeah, I kind of get what you're saying. I mean, I'll go ahead and go to Ash on this one. What do you think about that? Do you think that this movie is straightforward or not, especially compared to what you saw in Eraserhead, Ash?
Well, like Lydia's, I just watched this yesterday for the first time, and this was honestly one of my early experiences with David Lynch. So I also just watched Eraserhead in preparation for this podcast, because I know that was the episode that y'all had done right before I jumped on the podcast. So I wanted to kind of compare and contrast that, because the only other David Lynch thing I had seen prior to any of this was Dune, which, you know, obviously isn't even David Lynch's original work, but rather an adaptation. But I'm definitely noticing the surrealist qualities that are present in all three of those movies. And comparing and contrasting this with Eraserhead, I think I would agree that it's definitely more accessible. It's definitely a movie that would appeal to a more modern audience, being that it was, you know, made in 2001. And it does kind of get into the Hollywood culture. Not only that, but it's not nearly as crazy. I mean, most of Mulholland Drive seems to be fairly, I mean, for at least 2/3 of the movie, most of it seems to make sense. Like, it seems to be realistic, you know, it seems to be like some, you know, the shit is really going on despite, you know, other than, of course, the fact that we've got some disconnected, you know, parts of the narrative that not really sure where to place them in. But then, you know, by the end of the movie, that's all put into context and the whole thing turns upside down and you start to wonder, you know, what's real and what's not. Mm. And that's what's crazy, you know, is, you know, what is this movie? Are there parts of it that are dream, which is, you know, obviously the more popular interpretation, or is this some kind of Mobius strip where everything goes around in a loop? It's not clear. And what I thought was interesting was to see how many different interpretations there were about this, because there's definitely a logical interpretation, right? But there's also, you know, just there's so much more ambiguity to it. And even David Lynch has kept his lips sealed about that.
Yeah. Well,
as he's wont to do. I mean, that's kind of a common thing with David Lynch. He absolutely does not want to really let anyone know what he's actually trying to do with his work.
Yeah.
Robert,
grounded is the word I would say to compare this versus it's more grounded than Eraserhead is. Yeah.
I think no matter how many times you see it, something like this, a David Lynch film, or even The Shining, it's kind of like you're seeing it for the first time. By the way, this is my third David Lynch film I've ever seen. And, you know, Eraserhead was something new to me. That was something that kind of like took 7 years for him to make. And it just blew your mind. It was kind of like you were watching The Twilight Zone or some sort of Rod Serling story, you know? I don't know.
I would say that it's probably a little more penetrating than The Twilight Zone.
Yeah.
But I kind of get what you're going at there because, you know, I mean, there is always kind of a moral to The Twilight Zone's like writing and everything, like where it always ends up at.
Exactly. But the second film, Lost Highway, I mean, I've watched that twice, just probably as much as Mulholland Drive.
Yeah.
I've only seen Mulholland Drive like 3 times, and you still don't know what to expect every time you go into this. You know what I mean? David Lynch has got something up his sleeve every time, you know?
Yeah. Well, what's interesting about Mulholland Drive is that initially he was going to make this a television series, much in the same vein as Twin Peaks. What do y'all think this would have been like as a TV series? Would it have ended the same way that it did? Would it have had different, segues into different story arcs? I mean, what would it have been like?
You guys, look, I hate to step in. This is Naomi from Shocked and Applaud, like having to put my toes into your kiddie pool.
Okay.
When I look at where this movie begins, I'm like, oh, there's a femme fatale type who makes it out alive and then she falls asleep in a bush. But okay, we'll set that aside for a second. And then there's some guys who are like sheriff detective types, and they're like actually securing off a crime scene for once, as opposed to letting like reporters or random citizens wander through as one might. Like, I was like, oh, they might figure this business out. Like, they don't do anything with that. And it screams to the fact that this movie was going to be a series in what, Jen, other half of my brain?
99.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much to she is very right. Like, we were gonna like cut it off and like let it go and be like, let's pick it up with some officers and some like detailing and let's go after this business. And they didn't do any of that. They were like, here's a crime scene. And I was like, that's a pretty good crime scene for a I happen to consider myself like a true crime enthusiast, like my favorite murderer follower. Like, yeah, let's like not tromp against some stuff. Let's do it. And then I never heard any of it ever again for the entire movie. I was very angry about it. Like, good. They could have followed some people. I assure you, they would have tracked them down like no less than like 60% through the movie. They've been like, ma'am, it seems as if you've put out a hit on some people, and we don't do that, and so you're going to have to come into custody. And she'd be like, I'm very much on cocaine, and I can't come into this. And they would have been like, that in of itself is unacceptable. So mayhaps you come into custody. And like it would have been done. Like we wouldn't like as much as I approve of 2 hours and 20 minutes of a film, we would have been done an hour and 35 minutes.
So you kind of feel like it could have used maybe a little trimming around on the time and everything, and maybe a little more of an emphasis on like a police procedural kind of thing. I
mean, I love, okay, and you can yell at me about this, but I love non-sequitur, psychedelic bullshit.
Oh, okay.
I don't mind it. I don't mind it at all. But if you're going to give me linear crime procedure, you're going to have to give it to me in a respectable and reasonable way. And this movie gave me neither.
And it's interesting because what you're describing is pretty much what Twin Peaks is. That is David Lynch's police procedural as far as, his overall style and everything. But I mean, yeah, that would have been interesting to actually meet the policemen that were investigating all of that. Like, what do you think, Robert?
I still have no idea.
Yeah, Robert's a little mind fucked by this movie, I guess.
Aren't we all? But I want to say, going off of if this were a TV series, I can actually kind of see where some of that is going because, like I said, especially in the beginning, in the first third of the movie, we've got a lot of these disconnected fragments, all of these different storylines that don't seem to coherently make sense, which obviously if this is all a dream, then that makes a lot of sense. But I think that would have worked really well as a TV series because you could have had each of these storylines as independent episodes, right?
Yeah.
And so what you would have seen in the very first few episodes was these seem to have nothing to do with each other. These are disconnected storylines, and then it all comes together by the end of the season. So I could definitely see where that could have gone.
Nothing but cliffhangers, right? Leading to
Exactly.
other stories.
Exactly.
And then some of those storylines go nowhere. They're left open-ended on purpose. You know, like you were saying, there are some plot threads that are opened and then they don't finish it off. And I guess obviously I think on Lynch's part that is intentional, you know, for better or for worse on the audience's part. But yeah, it was definitely very interesting. It's an interesting style.
Yeah, I mean,
Can I just? I will yell at you for just a second.
Okay,
because
sure.
I appreciate all of your voices, but you will never, ever, till the end of time, tell me that the "it was all a dream" scenario is an acceptable ending for anything.
Agreed.
I mean, give me one, and I will give you credence. But oh my God, I cannot think of one.
Yeah. Typically, it is kind of a sketchy trope to use, and it's only been used to full effect a few times, I would say.
Give me one. That's all I'm asking for, friend.
Just one.
Naomi here at Shock and Applaud. Give me one time that it was 100% acceptable.
I honestly feel like this movie does it well because it's not like the entire thing was all a dream, just the first 2/3 of the movie. And all of that entire dream is essentially Diane's wishful thinking and her, you know, what she envisions and what goes through her mind in a different way of telling the story to us, the audience, prior to her suicide at the end of the film. So for me, I think it didn't raise a red flag as this is all the dream trope, you know, because usually that is kind of a garbage. It's been done too much, but I do like the way it was implemented here, and that, you know, not the entire thing was a dream, but just the first 2/3 of the movie, and it actually feels like a dream. And when you're watching it, you don't quite realize it until you look at it in retrospect.
Yeah, I've got a movie that probably fits that criteria. Audition by Takashi Miike. I would argue that is where the dream trope is kind of used to full effect.
Well, flesh it out for me because I don't know that one.
It was the pilot episode.
It was, Audition by Takashi Miike. It's this one movie producer. He does an audition to try to find himself a wife. He becomes enamored by this one lady named Asami, and it doesn't turn out particularly well for him, needless to say. It kind of descends into an absolute nightmare. But I would say that that's a movie where the actual sequence that looks like a dream, it kind of makes sense that it would be working that way because it's pretty obvious that the main character is knocked out with a drug or something. So he could be hallucinating all of that while he's sleeping.
It's like a lucid dream. Like,
yeah,
I thought this movie reminded me of two movies. I thought it was like a Fight Club scenario happening, and mixed with Vanilla Sky.
Vanilla Sky.
You want to know a film that does it right? Killing Night.
Yeah, exactly. Look that up on YouTube.
That's Robert's movie, by the way.
And Ash's editing.
Editing.
We all did it.
But yeah, I kind of feel like the open-ended structure of this movie, it was really influenced by the fact that this was a pilot that was rejected. You know, I mean, it's plainly obvious, but let's go ahead and get into the actual first half of the movie, which is purportedly the actual dream sequence here.
You say first half, but it's more like the first 2/3 or maybe even
yeah.
Is it not the first 3/4 of the film, guys?
3/4 maybe, yeah.
Like 2.5 hours long.
I would argue that if they did try to make it a half and half kind of thing, that we might feel more like these are parallel stories that are being told separately.
I am super feeling like I'm watching 3 or 4
different movies.
No, parallel
universes.
Yeah, but it's a TV show called.
Don't know.
Gen Z.
Sliders? Are you talking about Sliders?
No, I'm talking about Sliders.
I
It
remember
could be
Sliders. Or
But you're
Quantum
talking
Leap.
about no, it's like Twilight Zone. Hey, I got there. Okay, look, it feels like we're watching 3 or 4, probably 2 or 3 Twilight Zone episodes.
But they're all just kind of like mixed together.
Yeah, like here you are, and here you are.
Mm-hmm.
But where are you? And it makes me so mad because I am so easily confused and very, very gullible.
Oh, okay.
And they threw it all in one movie and it was like, here, have 2.5 hours of your life and then like figure it out. And I was like, I need scratch paper and some thought, and I don't have either. I really
I felt that way after watching it. I was kind of like, well, hold on a second. Let me rewatch that entire thing over again with context. Because let me figure out, okay, what does this mean and what does that mean? And then over time, the more you think about it and the more, I kind of did some researching online, looking at Reddit and this other website that had a bunch of stuff compiled together. And pieces of it start making sense. And I'm like, oh, well, this means that and that. Okay. But again, that's all just interpretation. There's not even one necessarily true interpretation. If you don't like the "it was all a dream" trope, you don't have to apply that here. You don't have to, there's different interpretations of this movie that don't involve it being a dream. That's just the most popular one and the one that seems most obvious. No, go ahead.
Yeah. But like Lydia watched a YouTube video that seemed to, oh my God, video hitting. I'm sorry, audio hitting. It's my super skill. Okay. But Lydia watched a video that like lined up like so many of the different things that you'd like to dismiss or like ignore, but then like, and that's the Lynch thing about it. And if I were to hang him from a tree, it would be what I did. But like all these specific tiny things, and maybe she can highlight a few of them, but like she had a few that she brought forth to me that was like, oh, of course, because I would be like, no, let's dismiss that. I don't give a lot of credence to a ashtray, but apparently Lynch does.
Well, I mean, the movie starts with him with a pillow, pretty much, like the story proper.
The ashtray is interesting because that is one thing I picked up on the first time I was watching it, because the ashtray in particular was used to place the scene. Yeah. So you see the ashtray go away, and then the next thing the ashtray's there, and so you think, and you're placing it in your head, and you're like, oh, so this happened before. This is in the past, and it helps you place the timeline of the movie. And I just thought that was a really clever and subtle way of doing that, because everything, even at the end, is the end of the movie is completely non-linear, and that's actually the real part of the part of the film that supposedly actually happened, what Bo calls the second half, or like the last fourth of the movie, right? Yeah. And that's the part that's most jumbled. It is completely non-linear because what we're seeing is, I guess, flashbacks, and maybe Diane is reminiscing.
Okay, but guys, betwixt you and I, the last 4 of the movie can live on an island somewhere adjacent to where we are now, but there are so many things that we could look at the main island. I would say Oahu of the islands that we're looking at, and Lydia has so many ideas about it, and I want to hear them. Okay.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. Like, what are these ideas about that? That sounds very interesting.
Okay, well, going back to the fact that this was a pilot for a TV show, have any of you seen Paranoia Agent, the anime?
I love Paranoia Agent. Yeah, that's a fantastic anime.
And it's great, but it would have sucked as a movie because of all of the different elements. And here's the thing, in that show, it's very episodic. So every episode deals with a very specific character. So, but I think that the ultimate benefit to this being a show is that it would have been very much like Twin Peaks. I'm assuming, I've never actually seen Twin Peaks, where it is a police procedural, but then the whole big thing at the end is the fact that maybe this isn't necessarily reality, but this is actually a dream. And I think it would have probably, knowing how successful that David Lynch was with Twin Peaks, I would almost say that having this be a TV show would have probably made it a lot more successful, plot wise, and it probably would have been a lot more enjoyable for someone like me. So not to say that the movie was inherently bad. The acting is incredible. Naomi Watts is just a phenomenal actress, and I love her in everything.
Yeah.
It's just, I guess it's more of a preference thing. My preference for a movie is something that does have linear storytelling. Or like, have you ever seen the movie Memento?
You know what? I haven't seen that, honestly.
Okay,
Yeah.
look. If not a garbage person in high school has not sat you down and been like, hey, we're going to watch this. Look, I'm going to set a Sharpie next to you. It doesn't mean anything. And my mom might walk through at an even moment, but we're just watching Memento. And then you're just like,
Yeah, but that had actual, like, the progression of that was still relatively linear. It seemed to make sense. There was a rhythm to it. In this, it doesn't feel like there's a rhythm. It feels like it feels, maybe it's just so avant-garde that I really have a hard time getting into it.
Lydia, it's garbage. Like, I want to like Memento, but unless you have a sketchbook and a care for being a middle-aged man in 2000, and we're not there anymore, you don't have to. I give you full carte blanche. You don't have to care about Memento
I wasn't
anymore.
talking about Memento. I was talking about Mulholland Drive. Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
No, you have to care about Mulholland Drive, but you don't have to care about Memento.
Oh, wow.
So Jen, do you have any thoughts that you would like to share?
I think that it's unfortunate that this came out in 2001 because Netflix really hadn't hit their stride with online storytelling yet.
Yeah.
This could have been a one-off, one-season show pretty easily. And I think that there's like this trifecta of David directors out there. It's got David Lynch, David Cronenberg.
Yeah.
And David Fincher. And between these three Davids, they tell some pretty strange stories. But this one, like, if this one is as accessible as something like Seven is, whereas like Eraserhead is like existence of the Cronenberg stories. Like there are different levels for how manipulative the director is going to be to the audience. And this one kind of hits in the middle. He'll allow you to believe that it's just a stream of consciousness, or that all of these are just dead ends in plots. And he wants you to step back from believing that the plot is the most important part of a story, and have you believe that the themes are important, that the characters are, what they're feeling is more important. And he'll kind of lead you into believing more that this is film as art.
Lynch has always been a very emotional filmmaker. I mean, even going all the way back to Eraserhead, I mean, the common accepted theory about Eraserhead is that that's because of his anxieties about his upcoming parenthood and everything. So that does seem to hold water. But another thing that I kind of feel about this movie is that it's kind of David Lynch's love letter to the golden era of Hollywood. Because, I mean, for one, Rita, she gets her name from Rita Hayworth. I mean, you see a Gilda poster in the apartment. And a lot of the cinematography to me kind of evokes that. It's maybe just a few color gradings away from being Technicolor almost.
Okay, look. A lot of this film, Naomi here. Hey, what's up?
Yeah, hello.
A lot of this film looks like garbage. But if you want to talk to someone who has an associate in arts degree,
right on.
Hey, what's up? I'm here.
Hey.
I graduated college that one time. Okay, we'll bring it down. Look, hey, children, also applauders or future applauders or guys who are here. I look at the background of a film a lot of the time. I can't help myself because there's an art director. There's someone who is setting the scene. There is someone who is like...
Cinematography tells a story by itself.
Yeah, and you knew that he threw some fucking money at this film.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, between, what was it, 9 million the first time and then like 7 million the second time?
Yeah.
Like, he did not not throw money at this film because we are like, it is literally like room to room. And so without trying to like scrunch it down like cellophane, like it is pretty significant, the settings of each room that we're in. And I don't want to put too much thought onto it, right? But one of the themes that I liked was that like the first scene with the detectives was like, did those teenagers have a pearl earring? And the guy was like, I doubt it. And I was like, girl with a pearl earring. And are you guys nerds enough?
Girl with the pearl earring? I don't think I've seen that yet.
I haven't seen it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's a super fucking famous painting of a girl with a pearl earring.
I can't believe it. I'm just so excited to be here. I'm in this dream place.
This one comes highly recommended.
Dream place. What are you doing?
Get out of the car.
Yeah, the girl is still missing.
What's wrong? I just don't know who I am. I wonder where you were going. Mulholland Drive. Come on, it'll be just like in the movies. We'll pretend to be someone else.
This is all an illusion.
You want to know who you are, don't you?
Where's this going?
Mulholland Drive. It's been a very strange day.
Getting stranger.
But okay, so it's actually a servant who had her hair done up in a protective wrap, who was white presenting, and as much as you want to work with that, she had one pearl earring, right?
Oh, that was Vermeer, right?
I have no fucking clue, friend. But I know enough to say that there's a super famous painting called The Girl with the Pearl Earring, right? But the actual painting that they reference is, oh my God, hold on. With all of your asses, hold on. I paused it on something that I was looking at earlier. And Jen knows what I'm talking about, and she's super mad that I don't know what I'm talking about.
I think that we should kind of loop back to you.
You cannot, because it is a portrait of...
Hey, we could take it all out in post, right?
Feel free. That's all I've ever given Jen the agenda to do. There is the portrait of Beatrice Cenci. Are you familiar? I doubt it because I looked it up today.
Probably not. I've never heard of that name.
Okay, so her father-in-law or somebody beat the crap out of her, and so she stabbed him to death, and he deserved it.
Ooh,
nice.
Wow.
Right? Can't disagree. That shit is reasonable. So what happens is they say, oh, do you think any of these other dead kids had a pearl earring? And the guy's like, I don't think so. Right?
Right.
But then they pan into the apartment that Naomi Watts' Betty character goes into, and she's like, I don't know anything about this place. And then they pan past this portrait that's easily mistaken for Girl with a Pearl Earring, but it's actually Beatrice Cenci, who was killed because her father-in-law or some such person tried to kill her, and then she was like, no thanks, and then she's killed him.
Shit.
Wow. Damn. Yeah.
Because it's all about the difference between committing a sin and being like, are you responsible for the thing you did because it was obviously evil, or within the context of circumstances, are you a piece of garbage or not because of everything you see in context.
Yeah.
Which kind of loops back to the way that the movie kind of plays out. Like, is Diane inherently evil because of what she did, or is she kind of justified in it?
I think she's just extremely just emotional about everything, and she lets that cloud her head because it's very obvious that she doesn't really want Camilla to die. She's very reluctant in putting out this hit on her. And yeah, a lot of that is reflected in the more dream sequences throughout the movie, you know, especially with the incompetence of the hitman when we first see him. I mean, she really, really wants to believe that he's so incompetent that he would just totally bungle the hit. And in a way, the first time we see Rita / Camilla, she's in the limousine and they're about to, the hitman's about to shoot her, excuse me. And then you have the car accident just come out of nowhere and just waylay them. That's Diane actually really wishing that and hoping that this hitman will fail.
Yeah, the whole dream is set up, and Rita as a character is, you know, essentially Camilla had the hit failed, and so you kind of get this regret in her character. So is Diane evil? No, I mean, is there really such a thing as an evil person? Donald Trump.
We're going there now, huh? God damn
it. You know, is there such thing as an evil person, or you know, or is it fully justified? No, of course not. But you put yourself in her shoes and you understand the feelings that brought her to that point, and you understand the regret. And the entire, you know, 3/4 of the movie is her fantasy vision of, and it's interesting that she even separates Camilla into two different people. That's what I thought was cool, is you have Rita, who is the person that she's attracted to, the person that she loves, the person who looks like her and who survives the hit and is a brand new person who has no recollection of who she is. And then there is the person who takes Camilla's name, who is put in the position of getting the lead actress part through nefarious means, through conspiracy, because this is all wishful thinking on Diane's part. And that's actually the girl that Camilla was kissing. And she has Camilla's name. And so it's interesting that her brain separates those two things. And she does a lot of that. Her brain does a lot of making things out to be different and putting this reality that doesn't exist. And she continually reminds herself. Her mind also fights back and continually puts the guilt back onto her at several points throughout the movie.
Yeah, and what's interesting about that is when after they see the body in Diane Selman's apartment, Betty fashions a blonde wig for Rita. So, I mean, it's kind of bringing it back all together and everything. That's before the scene at Club Silencio, which to me is my favorite part of that entire movie, is Club Silencio. Robert, what did you think when you saw Club Silencio, and what do you think of the performers and what they represent?
A lot of golden age Hollywood, right?
Oh, definitely.
You know, yeah, they were bringing back the old golden age, which was like 1920 to 1960s.
Yeah,
right?
And that's kind of reflected in Club Silencio, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it kind of has that vibe of an old school club like you'd see in the old movies.
Like the old 50s, like kind of like you're watching Hollywood Land with Ben Affleck, right?
Yeah, kind of, sort of.
Playing Christopher Reeves.
Yeah.
Hey guys.
Yeah?
Okay, look. I gotta do, and this is just me. Can we just do an age check right now?
Age check? I'm 38.
Wait, you are?
Yeah, I am.
24 years old.
You are not 24.
Shut up, dude. No, you aren't.
My character is 24 years old. Okay.
Oh my god.
Right, yeah, Robert's 31. I'm 25.
Hey, youngins. Hey,
You're older than
little
me.
ones. Hey, people way below my age grade.
Except for one.
But y'all are pretty. Look, I am a mature 37.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and I don't mean no disrespect, but like I grew up on Anne Rice's Interview with a Vampire.
Yeah.
Are you?
I'm
are you
also
guys
into
with
that.
me?
God.
Did you slurp it up with a spoon? Because I did.
It's been a long time since I saw that. I actually was pretty young when I saw that.
Are you saying that it did not shape you?
Yeah. Interview with the Vampire was my first R-rated My mom snuck me into that.
I think so. Yeah, I think that was my first R-rated movie too.
There ain't nothing wrong with that. But if you did not gaze upon Antonio Banderas's visage and be like, Théâtre du Vampire, and like
Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt.
Do you know what I'm talking about, though? Like, how did that affect you in 2001 if it didn't affect you in, like, I don't even know when that came out.
Like 1990.
It was the 90s.
94.
It had to have been no later than 98, right?
It was early 94, I think. Right?
Yeah, it was roughly mid-90s when that came out.
Same time as The Crow. Oh.
Well, if it's 94, the movie is actually older than me, but I remember seeing it young.
Dude, my Impreza is older than you, bro.
So, look, when dudes entered the Théâtre,
I have Space Jam underwear older than you.
Oh, no. I got a whole story about Space Jam if you want to, but we don't have to go there. What we're talking about right now is Théâtre de Vampire, and I'm 100% sure that I'm saying that wrong. But when the ladies entered the Café de Silencio, I was like, oh, we are no longer literal. You had to know that because, like, you're like, this doesn't make any, ooh, they're all crying so hard. And as much as me and Lydia and maybe Jenna understand female experience, like, you're gonna cry if something pulls at your tug strings, right?
Yeah, definitely.
But like the fact that they're all weeping as she sings like a Spanish rendition of Crying by Roy Orbison.
I'm crying.
Yeah, that's a great song.
Out of context, it does not make me feel that way.
Well, the context of that scene, at least in the more accepted theory, is that is where the dream is starting to really break down and reality is trying to assert itself. I mean, and that's why the host there, he's saying, no hay banda, no hay orchestro. There is no band. This is all a tape. It's all illusion. Yeah. It's trying to really implore to Diane that, look, you got to wake up and deal with this shit.
It's just an illusion, really.
Yeah.
But when you're the audience watching this for the first time, it's starting to break down on you and you don't understand what's going on. Yeah. And that scene confuses you so much until you look at it in retrospect, you know?
Well, I would argue that the first time you see it, you're probably supposed to kind of be in Betty and Rita's shoes. Like, you're pretty much in the same boat with her. I mean, they don't know why they're there. All they know is that Rita implored them to go there. And it's really just coming to the end of their journey in the so-called dream world.
Yeah, I would agree with that because, like, I mean, it's just kind of like very obvious that not just because of the fact that they're saying that this doesn't exist, but because of the fact that it's like, 2 a.m. and this club is still coming up. But the performances are also very like stilted and exaggerated. And the first time I saw it, I was like, wow, this is someone's weird performance art piece. And it very much takes you out of the reality of it. Though on second viewing, the first, like, I guess the first 3/4 of the movie is it's already pretty like fabricated as far as like other like the latter half goes. So it's like you kind of see that more in clarity and everything. And I don't know, like I guess like I've never listened to the lyrics of Crying by Roy Orbison, but it's essentially about like kind of breaking away from someone that you care deeply about, right?
The touch of your hand.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but it just feels a little bit like obvious that they're crying at a song that's crying.
Okay. Between you and me and a sob story, I will leave you at that well and you can drown there because I cannot stand a sob story because you cannot subside on salt water. You know what I'm saying? So as much as I was like, hey, Jen, I know this song. Well, the touch of your hand and crying over you, I'm just like crying. When I could not figure out the lyrics because they were in Spanish, I was like, that is what it is.
Well, the funny thing about the Spanish is, like going back to the regular dream theory, it's literally because she momentarily heard Spanish at the restaurant where she was dining with Adam and Camilla. I think it's literally just that arbitrary.
I mean, as far as I could tell, it was accurate. And let us not err on the side of, like, not any of us knowing Spanish.
See, now we watched this. We watched this on HBO Max, and in the captions, it says it's Italian.
Okay, but here's what happens is the captions say this is in English, this is in Spanish, this is in French, and this is in Italian. And so there are 4 other languages, and let me just
they're all based in Latin, by the way.
That is
that's something then.
That's a romantic language. You can just take that to you with you wherever you need to go. But hey, Lynch, as far as you're hearing my voice, and you won't, but here's where I am. Child of God, just because you include non-English languages in your film, you are no deeper than a kiddie pool.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
The end, Lynch. Take that where you need to go.
Yeah, Lynch has always had really idiosyncratic music choices in his movies, but
you have something interesting in the itinerary that I guess we haven't touched on yet, but you had mentioned how the state of the industry regarding how it treats actresses.
Yeah, I feel like there was a real commentary there, more or less, because I mean, it's very obvious what is happening with Camilla and Adam. I mean, she kind of went ahead and played that whole, casting couch scenario to her own benefit. But I mean, I kind of feel like it really injects a very cynical view of that, and also very rightly so, calling out the exploitation behind all of that. Because I mean, it is a system where someone like Diane could, she just doesn't really pop. She doesn't really assert herself. She doesn't really move forward as an actress, but someone like Camilla does. It's like, I mean, what's the real difference there? But ultimately it does say that that is wrong. It shouldn't be that way. And it definitely takes a very negative approach to that sort of thing.
See, when they pick an actor or an actress, you're on a top list of like 4 or 5.
Yeah.
And they already know who they want their star to be because of scheduling.
This is the girl.
This is the girl. Yeah.
You say the word actor because the word actress is nonsensical. It's the actor's job. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Where was I going with that?
Look, if you need somebody to lead you into the land of a man writing a lady's lesbian relationship, let me jump on the front of that wagon and let's go into some shit we don't know.
Exactly. It's very, very obvious that, Lynch doesn't know how to write a lesbian relationship.
I was super excited. I was like, oh no, they're going to do it. And then me, as a person who has been described as queer adjacent, was like, oh no, oh yeah, okay, girl, you got into bed naked. Let's see what happened. You got naked too. Hey, girl, what's up? My name is Naomi too. Let's get our top off. And like, I was like super down, and I know that it's not like super PC to like jump into sex scenes about stuff, but like, they did stuff and said stuff that I was like, no one would say or do any of that. Let's hold this too long. Let's say this too much. She said, I love you. And then she like did some stuff, and then she was like, no, I love you. And I was like, you don't gotta say it twice. She heard it once. Ladies heard it once.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah! Yes! If Jesus was there, he would be like, you only gotta say it once. We heard you, girl. I got you. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's almost like, so just reviewed Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and this whole conversation reminds me of the point of view gun. Like, you don't have to tell me twice. I'm already a woman.
Trillion, you hear my heart. You hear me. Trillion, you hear me.
I do think that there is a little bit of, maybe not so much in the actual love scenes, but Lynch is trying to expose some of what the glamour is really gilded. It's not real gold in Hollywood.
I will give Lynch points for giving non-sexy sexiness to women in this. If you looked at in the total of the film, like the sad, how did I say it, Lydia?
The sad sturbation.
Sad sturbation.
Yeah, that's.
Oh yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah, like you can't help but feel sad for her, but you're like, girl, I get you. You need some dopamine. You need to forget some stuff. You got to get on with your day. You know?
Yeah, totally.
Like, applaud to him for having that in his film, but like, there's not a lot of sexy in this total film that I super agree with. The audition scene, do you want to pick it apart because it makes my whole body hurt.
Yeah, it is more or less meant to show Diane's feelings toward the Hollywood industry that just keeps on telling her no, essentially. That's the way that I see that, because look at how the director is portrayed in that scene. I mean, he's practically kind of uncaring, and it kind of feels like, you know, her performance just kind of went straight over his head, just completely.
Okay, wait. There's the what's the guy with the pot belly and the mustache? And you know what part of my brain is?
Oh,
Super Mario.
I don't know if he's Super Mario, but
Bob Hoskins.
He's on the left side of the screen during most of this scene.
Oh yeah, but it's in this scene. He's like the director,
and he's the one who dismisses it overall. He's like, well, that was humanistic and long leaning and whatever the hell, right?
Right.
But then there's pervert who does the scene with her, and then there's like guy in the polo and the button up who's like super down, and then there's like the discount Deschanel and her boss, who was the redhead who was married to dude for like 10 years.
Right.
And then there's like girl who's making out with the Ron Howard type. And then dude is like, give me the I want to do the scene close up. And she's like, I don't know. He's like, yeah, no, I want to be really close up about it. And then look, they do the creepiest scene I've ever seen in my whole life.
He was also like, I'm not just acting. I'm not acting. I'm reacting. Like putting it all back onto the women that he's been auditioning.
I'm not
with.
acting. I'm reacting. It should be the number one reason you cut anyone from your script.
Well, and there's the social commentary in the film, and actually from Diane's perspective is, you know, she sees what she has to go through in order to make her way up.
Yeah.
You know, and what she has to put up with, and that's very present.
I agree. The difference between how she carries out the scene in the kitchen with Rita and how she carries out the scene with D-Bag McQuade, not related to any other McQuades. Like admitted that the scene is transformed and it's much better, but like the fact that she guides his hand onto her hip, the second that happened, I signed out. I was like, I don't have the emotional space for this. I haven't talked to any of you people ever again. And I did not check in again. Even though we watched it twice, I did not come back in until we were in the hallway.
Okay, so I just want to say something about this scene because it was something that really kind of, bothered me. In the context of the scene, Betty's character is ultimately angry about her dad's friend and them being in a sexual relationship. And it kind of makes me wonder, the fact that she talks about bringing the police involved, it's like, so was she underage when they had this relationship?
I 100% she was.
And that was that's what really took me out of the scene, especially since they kind of when they're playing it up, when it's just Betty and Rita playing it up, it's so cheesy and it's so I'm gonna
kill you.
Yeah. but
it
then
doesn't matter at all in the kitchen.
But in the actual moment, it's completely different, and it's played like in this dream sequence that it seems so like flighty, and the dialogue just feels so, like played up like it's this like 1940s film. There is this, it's like, this is the one moment where it feels like that facade drops, and it's played so straight and so serious.
You want to know what I say, Lydia?
Feel free.
Between you and the gentle persons or gentities, if we will, in the room, it's wet, and that's very, very gross.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree on that. I mean, there's just so many things that are unsettling about that particular scene. I mean, because first everybody is just so friendly, they seem so inviting, but then when they actually get into the gist of the scene, and say that again?
That girl with the black hair, we played it super close. I want to do that again. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Gross.
Also, at the very end of it, when they're walking out at the library, out of the library, towards the elevator, David Lynch literally writes a line where a woman says, oh, just sometimes we're catty, and I'm like, okay,
we're not talking shit. As you, I, and everyone else within earshot knows that when you step outside of management's ears, sometimes you say some shit, and you gotta, because otherwise your brain would melt and your skin would fall off your bones. So she's like, sometimes we're just catty, but it's like, no, you gotta talk some shit.
You remember the three of us would do that, guys?
Dude, you're gonna tell me that you do it. Give me your top three.
Well, we all used to work at the same store.
Okay.
And so like we just had just the worst experience with management there. It's just this.
Give me number one.
Too many to count.
I'm giving you three, and there are how many of you? Come on, give me one.
Probably an incident that involves some cigarettes that were kind of misplaced. Yeah, it led to a little bit of a scene, I would say. And I got sent home.
And I got yelled at because apparently I don't know how to read an inventory list.
Yeah. It's still some pretty fresh wounds right there, honestly.
But if we didn't all work at the same store, this podcast probably wouldn't have happened.
Yeah, so that's the silver lining there.
Yeah, but I'm making twice as much now, and I am enjoying my job a hell of a lot more. So fuck that place.
Okay, look, we can go back to the movie. Where were we at in terms of like metaphoric dream endings? Because this movie is not okay. Like if we were to check in on this movie in like a care facility, we would be like, this movie is not okay.
Oh, very much so. Very much so. Yeah, I mean, the ending, her suicide is pretty much foreshadowed throughout the entirety of the movie. Like, I mean, especially what precipitates that suicide. Like, for instance, what the tramp behind Winkies represents, like, that's failure right there. I think it's like right after she commits suicide, we see him again. And he's just kind of sitting there with the blue box, and it just kind of shows how that failure just kind of came full circle.
Did you not feel like the grandma and grandpa danced out of that paper bag? The brownies from Evil Dead Army of Darkness?
Oh, it totally like that. Yeah, it totally feels like the little ashes that pop up in the middle of that movie. It kind of has, especially that jerky looking. Go ahead.
Going off in tangents, we're good.
Sorry. That's a cheap blow, but my God, did you not feel it?
I did. Yeah, I agree. Certainly.
Okay, but then we landslide into the ending, don't we?
A little bit. Yeah, it does kind of hit you like a brick wall a little bit, But I mean, it's exactly the type of ending I would expect for a story like this. You know, I mean, it's a very Hollywood ending, definitely. Once again, evoking, you know, just the aura of Hollywood and the industry overall. I mean, yeah, in many ways, it can be a little bit of a meat grinder.
Yeah, Hollywood is a lot different than independent films in like New York or whatever, too.
Yeah.
It's kind of embarrassing.
Go ahead.
I had a dream about this place.
Oh, boy.
See what I mean?
Okay. So you had a dream about this place. Tell me.
Well, it's the second one I've had, but they're both the same. They start out that I'm in here, but it's not day or night. It's kind of half night, you know? But it looks just like this, except for the light. And I'm scared like I can't tell you. Of all people, you're standing right over there. By that counter. You're in both dreams. And you're scared. I get even more frightened when I see how afraid you are, and then I realize what it is. There's a man in back of this place. He's the one who's doing it. I can see him through the wall. I can see his face. I hope that I never see that face ever outside of a dream.
But anyway, I think that this is probably a good point to go ahead and start wrapping things up. I'm going to go ahead and pass on to the ladies at Shock and Applaud. What are your final thoughts on this movie? I guess we can go ahead and start with Naomi.
Hey, look, we at Shocked and Applaud, because we both revere and decry so much, I would say that the thing that I applaud the most, the thing that I love the most is I think the visual consistency, the fact that they thought about bringing in it's not the girl with the pearl earring, but like the lady who had an earring that was very much like pearl, and that like continued itself through. Like, as much as I would like to scream about how all of the women in the art in the backgrounds of the film were like super depressed or hiding behind glamour, was very much how I would have viewed going into the Hollywood atmosphere. I'm gonna steal one from Jen, and she can yell at me in a minute, but the plot is second to the themes and the characters of this film. Like, we are presented with so many beautiful visuals, and we are presented with so many situations that are relatable to, if not ourselves, then situations that we see so many different characters going into, that we can set that all aside and we have to watch the film and this is probably why Roger Ebert was like, this is a 4 out of 4 film for me, because ha ha ha. I don't know why he sounds like Mickey Mouse. He's like, this film is amazing and worth thinking about after you've watched it. And that is because the themes and the characters are so very, very strong, but that you can watch it and watch it again and then really kind of digest it afterwards. And as someone who has done that to no less than 20 films, I sit and think about the thing that I've watched and maybe put a far too much thought into it. And I would like to caveat that with the fact that I've watched and reviewed Earth Girls Are Easy.
Oh, wow.
So, like, no banners there. Let's pass it off to somebody else.
Yeah, I guess like if this movie is fully interpretable and there isn't anything, and this was just sort of like David Lynch's way of doing like a blank slate that anybody could see it. It's a Rorschach test. This is David Lynch's Rorschach test. Let's just say that that's what he was going for.
Yeah, I guess you interpret it the way you want, right?
Yeah.
Right. So I would almost think that Hollywood feels like this weird mix of art, logistics, and politics because you're trying to make something that is subjective. There's a lot of layers that go into it, and that's where the logistics kind of come in. You have to like plan things out because if things aren't planned out, then it just looks a little bit off. But there's also politics with the fact that the people who are in, who are in control of all of that money, they maybe want, this one person for whatever reason coming in and playing a part. So
excellent. Yeah, great point. And Jen, your final thoughts?
I would definitely like to see this as a Netflix series now that I've said it. I think this needs to be redone. If Lynch is going to go ahead and do a season 3 of Twin Peaks, he might as well get into some real TV. And so really, I'm just hopeful for, this to be adapted in other ways. And there was also maybe some cheeky costume decisions that if you see the costume designer credit in the credits, she's got a signature for her name instead of it typed out. And it made me think about the costume designs when we watched it a second time. And if you look at Camilla, or actually when she's Rita, she wears a lot of red, which is kind of, it could be interpreted as sort of the scarlet letter, like she's an adulterous woman, or she's not very trustful, at least in the perspective of Betty. So there's maybe some costume things that I would, if I was going to watch this a third time, I'd probably go in and look at again. This has rewatchability much more than, like Sixth Sense is always talked about as like this big ending movie where you got to rewatch it because of the ending. And I think that's true of this one, even if we all come away with different opinions about it.
Yeah, right on. Ash, we'll go ahead and go to you. What are your final thoughts?
Okay, so as one of the first Lynch films I've seen, besides Dune, which I guess doesn't count as much as original work does, I was genuinely surprised. I mean, I knew that I was walking into something that was surrealist, so I like the take of this movie in that most of it doesn't feel as surrealist. It feels very grounded, aside from, having these disjointed stream of consciousness type plot. And then, by the end, you're completely questioning everything. And, like Jen was saying earlier, it's one of those movies where you really have to watch it again a second time. And I feel that, as soon as I watched it, I felt that. I was like, man, I need to watch all of this with context and pay attention to all the little clues and foreshadowing that's everywhere. But yeah, no, I was genuinely surprised. I enjoyed this movie more than I probably thought that I would have. And it, again, made me interested in, kind of looking into some more of David Lynch's work. So, honestly, it was trippy.
Robert, your final thoughts?
I don't think any one of our theories is wrong, but I think it's like a take of an actor's job going in and out of Hollywood, because how many people go in and out of Hollywood each year and never make something of themselves? At least 200,000 in and out of, And, that's just a take of what the business is. They want you to be something that you're not. And how many people just, are cut then and there. And, the business is cruel. I mean, and it'll make you do things. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's a pretty classic trope, like both in real life and in the movies of Hollywood.
That's the way it goes into the old Hollywood things. Like the director wants to be something you're not. The whole industry wants to be something that you're not. Yeah. But you kind of have to give into it, right? In order to like give this image, give this whole persona, and
yeah, right on.
Okay, wait. Okay, so in the vein of arrogance, and let me just step right in because I will speak on things I know not what. Naomi Watts, because I care about her, because she's my namesake, and also she's the Jet Girl and Tank Girl, which is, I want to be Lori Petty, but I will take Jet Girl in second place. But in 2001-ish, when this whole concept started swirling around the David Lynch universe, Naomi Watts was like on the verge of bankruptcy. She was about to get foreclosed on. She was like, I gotta get out of Hollywood. And then chick who was married to, oh no, hold a second. You'll see how flawed my brain is. And it's super sad, but Scientology guy,
Katie
Nicole
Holmes?
Kidman.
Tom Cruise.
Nicole Kidman. Yeah, we got there, guys. Motherfucker. Okay, sorry for the needing to edit that. Okay, Nicole Kidman was like, "Hey, girl, you gotta hold on until the release of this movie," and she was like, "Okay." And then she did, and then she became like Hollywood. Like, what is she? She's not necessarily A-list, but she's like B+. B++. She proved herself probably with this film. And that in and of itself is something to be commended. I just wanted to put up there.
Yeah, that is definitely a good point. Naomi Watts is absolutely wonderful in this movie. And honestly, I wish that she would get more work. I mean, she was great in the Funny Games remake. So
The Ring.
And yeah.
King Kong with Jack Black. So
Yeah, she was good. It would be good to see her get some more roles. But
I like that you commend her as gorilla bait.
But anyway, my final thoughts. I mean, no matter what interpretation you approach this movie from, whether it's from the consensus theory or whatever, I feel like I get the whole thoughts about maybe, it being disjointed and that it would make more sense as a TV show and whatnot. But I mean, I think that as far as David Lynch movies are concerned, like in this one, he actually leaves a lot more, at least in my view, he leaves a lot more for the viewer to really latch onto as far as the meaning and everything. And in many ways, he kind of spells it out in this movie, which you don't really see in like Lost Highway or definitely not Inland Empire. Like that's a whole nother can of worms. But I feel like, this movie is actually also very entertaining in its own right. As entertaining as a David Lynch movie can be. So, I mean, I feel like it's an essential movie. Like, you can get it on the Criterion Collection, or even if you just find it at just the regular DVD release, I recommend watching this movie and just going into it, expecting something a little both less abstract and more abstract at the same time somehow. It's definitely, like I said before, and I'll say it again, it's his most accessible work outside of maybe Blue Velvet or The Elephant Man. So I personally recommend it, even with the flaws that were brought up during the show. There's still a lot that I can take from this movie.
You know what the whole deal about Shocked and Applaud is? That you can find something abhorrible about a film and still find something fantastic about it.
Yeah.
And that's not wrong. Like, you don't have to only base your viewing on merit. You can base it on aberration.
That's true. Well, we'll go ahead and let y'all plug your show. Where can we find Shocked and Applaud?
You can find us on Twitter at Shocked Applaud. That is also our handle on Instagram. You can also reach us on our Facebook page at Shocked and Applaud, or Gmail, shockedandapplaud@gmail.com.
Excellent.
Also, I should mention that we do have a Patreon, which is only $1 a month, and we just search for Shocked and Applaud on Patreon, and you should find it there. We also have shockedandapplaud.com, which has all of our links and access to whatever podcast channel you're looking for.
Woo woo, Jen, good job.
Excellent. Ash, go ahead and plug Collateral Gaming. What's in the
works for
there?
Collateral Gaming?
Hell yeah. Well, if you love Collateral Cinema, if you enjoy listening to us and you also love video games, you'll enjoy Collateral Gaming. We actually just got out we were a little late on it, unfortunately, but we got out our holiday special on Assassin's Creed Valhalla, and then our next episode is going to be Ghost of Tsushima. and I am super excited about that. And then afterwards, we're going to be doing something a little bit different. Typically, we do more narrative-based games with stories that we have, kind of something to talk about. And we're going to talk about, one of our first multiplayer games, and that's going to be Apex Legends, recommended by my co-host Zach. So that's going to be exciting. Definitely stoked to be talking about that, especially Ghost of Tsushima, because it has been an amazing journey. You can find us wherever you listen to Collateral Cinema, and we also do have a Patreon where we release our Let's Play video game commentaries.
Excellent. And Robert, you want to plug anything?
Yeah, subscribe to my YouTube channel. Find me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And look for Killing Night and some of my latest mechanic videos that should be uploaded.
Right on. And you can find Collateral Cinema on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Chill Lover Radio. You can find us pretty much wherever you get your podcasts. We also have a Patreon. Our tiers start at $1. Check us out there. And also check out our next upcoming anniversary episode, which is our Miike-versary. Once again, we're going back to Takashi Miike.
Oh, man.
And we are going to be getting into Gozu.
You got to bring your brother back for this one.
Yeah, you do. I want to break. I want to break Dakota a little more. I want to break
the last Miike-versary episode broke him.
Yeah, we did Visitor Q. So, yeah, but look for that, and I guess we'll go ahead and end right there. I'm Bo Maddox.
I'm Robert Ortegon.
I'm Ashley Chancellor.
Hey, this is Lydia, Jen, and Naomi at Shocked and Applaud, and we always end like this. Yay!
Yay! Also, Collateral Cinema is out, ladies and gentlemen. We are Collateral Cinema. Thank you, Shocked and Applaud, for being on the show. We will see you again very soon. Laters.
Yo que pensé que te olvidé, pero es verdad, es la verdad, que te quiero aún más, mucho más que ayer. Dime tú qué puedo hacer, no me quieres.
Collateral Cinema is an L Company production. All music and movie clips are owned by the respective creators and are used for educational purposes only. Please don't sue us. We're poor.